events have overtaken us, because one of the manuscripts you're going to present was only added to the Gregorial Antilista last week. So you are hot off the press to tell us about two manuscripts of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena on Nomen, so from Apostolic Fathers to Byzantine Fathers. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Hugh, for this opportunity. So this paper presents the results of a philological and palaeographical examination of two witnesses to the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena on Romans. These are Oxford, Bodleian Library, Auct T17, Michelianus 185, henceforth GA 2962, and Florence, Biblioteca Medicea Laurenziana, Plut 10th, henceforth GA 1919. The aim is to answer the following questions. Are these two manuscripts related to each other? Do they preserve an original shortened version of the base text of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena on Romans? And what is the position into the stemma codicum of the textual division? So first of all, among the 83 manuscripts of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena on Romans, GA 2962 and GA 1919 are worthy of particular consideration. The first is a 10th century manuscript in the format of an alternating catena. This means that the exegesis immediately follows the biblical lemmata in the format of a full running text. Nothing much is known about the history of the manuscript, apart from the information provided by Professor Anna Clara Cataldi-Palau in the description of the codex made for the catalogue of the manuscripts of the Merman collection in the Bodleian Library. According to Cataldi-Palau, the earliest ownership marker that you can find also in my PowerPoint presentation is this ex libris from the later 16th century, although the name is not given. We know that later the manuscript was numbered among the 33 Greek manuscripts of the library of Dr. Marcon, professor of theology at the University of Barcelona in 1582, and then the manuscript was acquired by Jean Lebel de Moulin of the Order of the Jesuits, who wrote a short title on Folio 1 recto, Ecumenius et Areta in Epistola Pauli. After his death, his manuscript became the property of the Jesuit of Clermont, as confirmed by the shelf mark on the front cover, MG 113, the index by Jacques Simond at the beginning of the manuscript, the ex libris Collegium Paris Societatis Jesu, and the so-called Mesnis paragraph on Folio 1 recto. It was probably during the passage from the library of Marcon or Jean Lebel de Moulin to the library of the Jesuits in Clermont that the manuscript lost the first 10 chapters of Romans and the whole epistle to the Hebrews, apart from the hypothesis by Theodoret. After the dissolution of the Jesuit order and the suppression of the library of Clermont, the manuscript was acquired by the Dutch nobleman Jerome Manford Vian de Gulden, and then finally entered in the Bodleian Library in Oxford after the Merman sale. So in the first part of my presentation, I just want to provide some basic information about the palaeographical description of manuscript GA 2962 and GA 1919, while in the second part of my presentation, I tried to investigate the relationship between these two witnesses on the basis of a philological analysis of the biblical text and the text of the Catena. So first of all, regarding the content of the manuscript, of the Oxford manuscript, GA 2962 as the text of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena of the Pauline Letters from Romans to Philemon, Romans 10:16 to Philemon. Actually, the presence of a double preface before Hebrews suggests that the manuscript originally held the complete text of the Catena for all the 14 Pauline letters with Theodoretan prefaces. As you can see here, the manuscript is written on a beautiful white parchment in brown ink for the text of the Catena, for the text of the biblical text, the titles and the rubrics, is a product of a single hand who also writes several additional scholia in a neat minuscule of the 10th century that Anna Clara Cataldi-Palau identifies as a typical Kirchener style or minuscule bulletin. The letters in this extract from the Folio 10 verso are upright and above the writing lines with small bulls and hooks to the right for the descending verticals. Overall, the letters have a small module and the vertical ascending and descending traits are not too prominent, with the only exception, for example, of the phi with the descending trait with this kind of hook to the right. Also, one particular letter typical of the bulletin is this kind of kappa written in 2 times with this curve below the line, touching the body of the next letter. Then we've got the typical example with the tachygraphic chi, written as a S. And talking about the abbreviation, these are infrequent and comprise mostly nomina sacra, and the abbreviation of the final ni, usually at the end of the line. So why I decided to use GA 1919 in my presentation, and why 1919 could be a possible sibling of the manuscript 2962. So, using the commentary of Rome on Romans 7.8 as a test passage to investigate the relationship between the 83 manuscripts of the textual tradition of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena Romans, I selected GA 1919 as one of the potential representatives of the Urform of the tradition, alongside GA 94, GA 2011, and the Oxford manuscript, which Karl Stab described as the form closest to the Ur Catena. Then I expanded the analysis to Romans 10:16, 16:26, and I discovered that the Extravagantes, which I will talk later about, the Extravagantes added in the margin and those included among the unnumbered comments in the text of the Catena are exactly the same in GA 2962 and GA 1919. So, just a few words about the history of the manuscript in the Medicea Laurenziana Library. So, according to the ex libris that we find at the end of the manuscript, GA 1919 was the property of the Abbey of San Salvatore in Septima in Florence, and was later included among the 37 manuscripts given to the Laurenziana Library in Florence by order of Cosimo I in 1568. It is written in a minuscule bulletin of the late 10th century, according to an oral communication by Georgi Parpulov, of the bulletin, like this pula above the letters, all this kind of gamma, is typical of the bulletin with hook to the right, to the left. Then we've got the kappa in 2 times that we see also in the Oxford manuscript. 3 different types of chi, ligatures from above and below, but at the same time, there are also some elements that diverge from the canon of the bulletin. For example, the bigger dimension of some letters, like in this case, omicron, and this open sigma with inclusion of letters within, and in particular, the Latin shape of this delta. According to Canar e Perria, which wrote a very comprehensive description of the minuscules in the 11th and 12th centuries, this kind of uncial delta is a characteristic of the 12th century manuscripts. So a palaeographical description of the manuscript is needed in order to understand if GA 1990 could be considered as one representative manuscript of the late 10th century bulletin, or could be considered as a late example of a minuscule of the 11th or 12th century with elements of the bulletin from the 10th century. Based on the analysis of the structure of the catena in 2962 and 1919, I found that these 2 witnesses have the same anomalous distribution of the exegetical material compared to the manuscript Venice, Biblioteca Nazionale Marciana, Greco Z33, GA 1923, which I'm currently considered as the base text of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena Romans on the grounds that it contains the full set of Pseudo-Oecumenian scholia. GA 1923 is an 11th century manuscript in the format of a frame or marginal catena, in which the biblical text, as you can see, is in the middle of the page, surrounded by the text of the exegesis in the format of a frame. The Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena consists of 3 different types of material, all found in this manuscript. The first stage is a set of numbered extract, a total of 917 numbered scholia. The second is a series of unnumbered scholia added later, and usually indicated by symbol or by rather than numbers, or usually anonymous, or with the name of the Greek church fathers in front, and these are called as extravagantes. The third and final type of material found in the manuscript is a set of extracts attributed to the 9th century Archbishop Phocius of Constantinople, which is called scholia phociana. Well, although all 3 types of material are found in the majority of the manuscripts of the Pseudo-Oecumenian manuscript, GA 2962 and 1919 are unusual. They do, first of all, they do not have the scholia phociana, and they are also lacking the majority of the extravagantes. As the majority of the commentary consists only of the numbered comments due to the format of the catena that's an alternating catena, this is the reason that Karl Stab thought that these 2 manuscripts might preserve the original form of the catena type. However, out of the 22 scholia added in the margins of Romance in GA 2962 and GA 1919, I discovered that 10 scholia are actually attributed to Ecumenius, as you can see in my PowerPoint. We can have the scholia from Ecumenius with the name of Ecumenius in front before the beginning of the scholium in the margins of 2962, 1919, and in the manuscript of the base text. 5 are attributed to Severin of Gabala. 3 are anonymous number comment in the text of GA 2962, 1919, 1923. 2 are anonymous comments in the text of the Catena in 2962, 1919, but agree with the numbered extract of the base text. For example, in this case, we've got a scholium, which is indicated by a symbol, but if you make a comparison with the same text passage in the base text in Gregory Allen 1923, we found that this scholium is actually numbered as Xi sigma. And we got also in common one scholium for Dionysius of Alexandria, entity of Pleiones, and one scholium for Theodoret of Ser. Nevertheless, 12 comments which feature among Extravagantes in the base text in GA 1923 are included in the main body of the Catena in these two manuscripts, rather than be added in the margins of the text. These are 5 comments attributed to Ecumenius. I decided to put in my PowerPoint presentation one of these. In 1923, you got the scholium preceded by the name of Ecumenius, Aeta Epeide up to Ekdekontai, and in the text of 2962 and 1919, the same scholium that is normally added in the margin of the text of the Catena is included among the number extracts of the Catena in 2962 and 1919. And we got also 7 anonymous scholia indicated in GA 1923 by Science. In addition, both in the GA 2962 and 1919, 7 extravagantes are absent and present in the text of 1923. For example, on the folio 72 verso, we've got a comment iota beta, it's Elese up to Sum Ferontos. Then we got one scholium from John Chrysostom, and then scholium iota gamma from Uden to Elson. If you make a comparison with 2962 and 1919, we've got the scholium iota beta, it's Elese up to Sum Ferontos, and then directly the scholium iota gamma without the scholium from Chrysostom in the middle. So among the 7 extravagantes present in the text of 1923 and absent both in the text of the manuscripts of 2962 and 1919, 3 are from John Chrysostom, 2 are anonymous comments, and 1 is from Genadius of Constantinople, and 1 is a number comment. So, to sum up, the presence of some of the extravagantes in the manuscript, both in the margins and in the text of the Catena, proves that neither of the witnesses is a null Catena, so the earliest state of the text with just the number set of comment and without the later addition of the extravagantes and the scholia Fuziana. However, it is likely that these manuscripts are the earliest form of the normal type, with some of the extravagantes added in the margin before they have been yet incorporated into the standard text of the Catena type of the normal type. In other words, these manuscripts appear to be the only witnesses of an intermediate phase between the old Catena and the creation of the normal type, where the separation between the numbered extracts and extravagantes had not yet been completely established. However, the presence of some of the extravagantes of the manuscript of the normal and expanded type among the numbered scholia in the text of the Catena in GA 2962 and 1919 poses the following questions. Are these originally numbered scholia which were later developed into extravagantes? And were the extravagantes added piecemeal and not as a single corpus? In addition to the analysis of the distribution of the exegetical material in 2962 and 1919, I collected both the biblical text and the Catena in these two manuscripts in order to investigate deeper the relationship between these two witnesses. The collection of the biblical text of GA 2962 and GA 1919 with the majority text showed that both the manuscripts broadly agree with the Byzantine text, with several shared alternative readings which can be summarized as follows. However, I decided to pen a Roman 1616 that could be useful to shed a light on the relationship between GA 2962 and 1919. So in the first case, in Romans 14:10, J2962 and J1919 share the reading tis ei ocrinon against the majority text, and the base text, that's tis ti crinis, and Nestlianan 28. Actually, there is no indication of this variant reading in the apparatus of Nestlianan 28, although Tischendorf records it in one minuscule manuscript. This is Oxford Bodleian Library, row 16, GA 1908, which also has the text of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena Romans in a frame format. Furthermore, and this is particularly interesting, this manuscript presents an alternative beginning, Zeteton Tino Senecen Aututo Onoma, that is actually found also in the manuscript J1919 and J94, alongside the usual beginning of the text of the manuscripts of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena Romans, that's Troapos Graphein. The presence of the variant rig tis ei ocrinon could be explained as a repetition of the same expression found in Romans 14.4, zu tis ei ocrinon allotion, while the other manuscript is the second person singular for the sake of vividness, to quote Cranfield and a critical exegetical commentary on the Romans. Finally, according to the information provided in text-to-text, Textual 42, the variant reading ai ecclesiae pasai tu theu at the end of Romans 60:16 is a lectio singularis found only in J1919. In fact, this variant reading is present also in J2916, but as this only received its GA number last week, it wasn't, of course, included into the text-to-text. The majority text at the base text as the variant reading Ecclesia to Christu, while 94 at 2011 as the variant reading Ecclesia to Tseu. So the combination of Pasai with Tutseu, completing the two readings, appears to be peculiar to these two manuscripts. However, in terms of the relationship of these two manuscripts, there are also several unique errors in J2962, which go against the text of J1919 and the base text and the majority text, and bear witness to a corrupted text to this manuscript. For example, in Romans 11:17, J2962 has the lectio singularis Tistocladon against the Tinestocladon found in all the other manuscripts, so J1919, J94, and J2011, and the majority text. And for example, in Romans 14:11, as you can see in the PowerPoint, we have the unusual and nonsense reading pa glossa in the text of the 2962 against pasa glossa in the text of 1919, 94, and 2011. These minor errors suggest that the GA 2962 cannot be the source of GA 1919, although it is possible that such obvious errors could have been corrected during copying. However, the collection of the text of the Catena in GA 2962 and 1919 confirms the close relationship between the two manuscripts and brings two more manuscripts into consideration. These manuscripts are Parisinus Christianus Grecus 202 bis, J94, and Parisinus Supplementus Grecus 1264, J 2011.
Yeah, Jacopo, Jacopo,
yes.
We had a problem with your microphone. I wondered if you could start again from the beginning of this slide, please.
Yes.
If you speak quite slowly, then the microphone hopefully won't go too fast.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's better. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. So I said the collection of the text of GA 2962 and 1919 confirms the close relationship between the two manuscripts and brings two more manuscripts, two more witnesses into consideration. These are GA 94 and GA 2011. They share the same distinctive readings in the biblical text of GA 2962 and 1919 in text-to-text, except for the variant reading in Romans 15:8 and 15:11, and they have further readings in common with GA 19 against GA 2962. For example, in Romans 10:11, the following reading is attested in GA to Pragmatus, in GA 2962, GA 1919, GA 94, and GA 2011. While in the base text, we have the form prostagmatus. In my opinion, the lexion prostagmatons might be present in the archetype of the textual tradition, and the mistake might have been created at some point between the archetype and the text of J 2962, 1919, 94, and 2011. In this case, the mistake might have palaeographical lesions. In the archetype, pros might have been abbreviated as PR, the scribe misread the abbreviation and wrote pragmatos. Alternatively, it could be just a simple instance of a more familiar word being copied rather than a more specific term. Overall, there are only 12 cases in Romance where GA 2962 has single errors against the text of GA 1919 and the base text. Besides the most common scribal mistakes, two variants are worth of discussion in order to clarify the relationship between these two manuscripts. In Romance 31, we see that the GA 1919 has diocesan autas. In the base text, we've got the same variant reading, the diocesan autas. In GA 2011 and GA 94, we got adiocesan autas, while in the 2962, we've got adikaiosen autas. In this case, it is more economical to understand that diocesan is the lexion found in the archetype and shared by the base text, and the mistake originated actually in GA 2962, which misunderstood diocesan with a facilior but less convincing dikaiosen. As with the early differences, the reading demonstrates that GA 1919 is not a direct copy from GA 2962, because it is unlikely that such a possible alternative reading was noticed and substituted during copying without some adjustments to GA 2962 itself. Interestingly, G894 and J2011 as a variant from the same verb diokeo, while in this case the augment of the aorist version is at the beginning, is before the main verb, while in both the 1919 and in the base text, we have the augment in between the preposition and the base and the main verb. While in the GI 2962, this is like the not proper lexion, and as I said before, there is also the addition of the augment above, maybe by the same end or by a later end. Moreover, in Romance 4:15-15, an evident sod mem in 2962 against the full text in GA 1919, the base text 2011 and 94, confirms that the error was generated in GA 2962. So to sum up, we can drive some conclusions. So we say that 2962 cannot be a copy from GA 1919 on the basis of chronological reasons, because as I said before, the palaeographical analysis confirmed actually states that the GA 2962 is another copy of GA 1919. But of course, a palaeographical analysis needs to be confirmed in order to say if 1919 is from the late 10th century or from the beginning of the 11th or either 12th century. We said that GA 1919 is not a copy of GA 2962 because of the diocesan, as I said before. And at the same time, the presence of shared some conjunctive errors between 2962 and 1919, besides the same anomalous distribution of the exegetical material into manuscripts, can prove that 2962 and 1919 are two sibling witnesses. However, I would like to focus your attention, or I would like to investigate later on the position of GA 94 and 2011 in the stemma codicum of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena Romance. The presence of selective conjunctive errors of our two witnesses in the manuscripts of GA 94 and GA 2011, alongside the presence of common readings between these two manuscripts and the text of GA 1919 against GA 2962, could offer new philological perspectives and include these two manuscripts in the same branch as 2962 and 1919. Of course, a closer examination of the text of the Catena in these two additional manuscripts needs to be made. I conclude with a forte desiderata. Based on a provisional study of the Extravagantes in the text of J2962, 1919, 94, 2011, I noticed that all the Extravagantes added in the margin of J2962 and 1919 are absent from the text of 94 and 2011. So the question is it possible that these two manuscripts, 94 and 2011, are witnesses of a previous stage, maybe the Catena, where those which are recorded as extravagantes in a later stage are still included in the row or number extracts? I'm looking forward to taking my research further and addressing these questions more fully. And for now, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Jacopo, and we're all unmuted to express our appreciation. So I press the mute button again and invite questions from raised hands or in the chat. Oh, there's the University of Birmingham. Nice to know it's still there from a different perspective. Are there any questions? Jacopo, I'm trying to unmute you, but I'm having difficulty. Oh, that's better.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
I can hear you. So questions or observations? Oh, Christina, I see you have a question. Did the unmute button work?
Yeah, now, okay, sorry. Well, thank you very much. I loved all the examples you gave from the manuscripts and all the screenshots. So thank you for going through the trouble of making all those and pointing it out, and it made it really easy to follow. So thank you very much. It was lovely to see all this variety, actually. May I ask, I mean, looking at this and also the things you pointed out with the special delta and things like that, what had you the most surprised actually about all of this? And I mean, it must have been a really great excitement to find out the things. And so what would you say you didn't expect at all and was just the most exciting thing?
Actually, as I said before, I was excited about the manuscripts, about discovering this manuscript, the Oxford manuscript that actually wasn't inserted into the list since last week, or a couple of weeks ago. And there is how do you say, not a lot of bibliography about this manuscript, except for this very good description made by Anna Clara Cataldi Palau. However, I think it would be interesting to study more the palaeographical aspects in order to understand deeper the close relationship between these manuscripts, because as I said before, especially 1919 is a difficult manuscript in terms of palaeographical aspects. So at the beginning, I thought it was a minuscule of the late 11th, beginning of the 12th century. But then I asked to Georgi Parpulov, and he told me that in his opinion is a minuscule bulletin of the late 10th century. But at the same time, there is this kind of Anshel D that postponed the date of the manuscript to the 12th century, possibly. So, although Paul Canara Lidaperia said that there are attestations also in the 10th or 11th century. So it's very difficult to date precisely when we deal with Greek paleography, because it could be also a minuscule of the 11th with some element of the bulletin of the 10th century. So I think this is very challenging, but it could be useful to understand how these manuscripts are related. Because, for example, in the catalog of the Laurenziana Library, that's a catalog from the 18th century, I suppose, the manuscript is dated around the 11th or 12th century. But in the Sotel repertoire des recueils the manuscript Greek in parchemine, the manuscript is dated around the end of the 10th and the beginning of the 11th century, the Florence manuscript. So it's difficult to date precisely, and I'm looking forward to studying the script deeper and with the help of Georgi and Hugh and the other members of staff, and try to propose, if possible, a clear definition of this manuscript and the Oxford.
it sounds like it's fashionable at the moment to go as late as possible, but I look forward to see actually what you find with the paleography. It really looks good. So good luck with your work and with what you do.
Thank you. Jan has asked a question about which Comptia manuscripts get a Gregory-Allen number and which ones don't. I mean, I see that Georgi is around. Georgi, would you like to say something on the Catena manuscripts you've been looking at and which ones have been allocated a number?
Right. Well, it's difficult. I mean, it's not up to us which manuscript gets a number and which one doesn't. It's the people in Münster who decide. The general rule is that it is only manuscripts that contain the biblical text in its entirety that are worthy of a GA number. And there are a number of commentary manuscripts that where the biblical text is abridged. So these are not, in theory at least, these are not kurzgefasste Liste material. Nonetheless, the current list does contain a few manuscripts where the biblical text is abridged. So there is no strict rule really. What we do is we get in touch with people in Münster if we think that there is a manuscript that needs to be added to the list, and then it is their job to review it and see whether they want it or not. So that's the procedure. I think they have decided not to exclude any codices that are already in the list, even if the biblical text in these is not complete. Right. Sorry for the long answer.
No, thank you. That's very helpful indeed. And it does mean that we can confirm that this manuscript that Jacopo has been talking about, 2962 in Oxford, does have a complete text of Romans for the chapters. Yeah. Super. Are there any more questions about Catena while we have so many Catenists in one place? There's probably ought to be a nice collective noun for people who work on. Chiara, let me unmute you.
Hello, sorry, when I just put the video on so you can see me. Hello, hi Jacopo. Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting. I was just, you know, thinking about the last question you had on the slide. If you know, considering the manuscript as an early, did you say an early stage of the normal type, or you know, a stage in between the Ur type? I wonder, don't you think is the same thing say that if you consider the normal type as, you know, probably a very early stage of the Catena, and if you consider that the normal type, you know, it's the stage before the Harvey-Tert type, the expanded type, let's say that, don't you think is saying the same? So you don't have a real, you know, it's like if it's a normal type, it's already in between the Ur type and the, you know, the rest of the Catena types.
Yes, thank you for very much for your question, Chiara. Actually, I don't think it's a stage in the middle between the Ur Catena and the expanded type, so a representative of the normal type.
Right.
But in the stage in between the Ur Catena and the first and the normal type. Because, for example, in the normal type, I don't know, one, I think the Paratinus Grecus 10, Gregory Allen, 1997, if I'm right, is one of a typical example of the Catena of Pseudo-Oecumenius on the Pauline Letters of type A. In that case, we've got the number comment plus extravagantes perfectly established. In the case of the Oxford manuscript, I said that we have some of the extravagantes added in the margins that agree with the extravagantes added in the margin of the base text. Some of the extravagantes in the text of the Catena of the Oxford manuscript as unnumbered comments, and part of the extravagantes are absent. So in my opinion, maybe they are in the stage in between the Ur Catena that just have the numbered extracts and the first and the normal type that has the extravagantes established and the numbered extract. So
right,
the extravagantes are not completely established yet.
Okay.
Were extravagantes maybe originally the number comments, then diverted into unnumbered, I mean, like with the name of the church fathers in front in the normal type. I don't know if if this is clear, but this is something that I would like to.
Right. Thank you for clarifying this. It was very, very interesting. Thanks.
Thank you. Last chance for the formal question. I mean, I do find it fascinating that somebody starts a commentary on the Epistle to the Romans by writing 917 numbered comments all the way through and then matches them one by one to the text of the epistle. And then somebody comes along later on and sort of starts adding squiggles and so on to add the additional material. I mean, it's a fascinating way of proceeding, and it does make one wonder about the mentality behind the construction of these catenae and the extent to which they could be attributed, well, we get any hints about the compiler and their background.
You mean of the Oxford manuscript in general?
In general, of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena, that everything is numbered in a very sort of strict way in each epistle.
So actually, this is the challenge of studying the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena. So trying to understand how the compiler works and how the expanded type is established altogether, which are the processes that arrive to the expanded type. I don't know yet, but I think that maybe the Oxford manuscript could be, as I said before, that if we don't have the Auct Catena among the manuscripts of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena Romance, this could be the closest form of the Auct Catena, so of the stage between the numbered extracts and the numbered extracts and extravagantes, and later the later addition of the Fuziana. So extravagantes, in my opinion, are not added as a single corpus, but added piecemeal. Because, for example, in another manuscripts of the expanded type, we have got a total different extravagantes related to the base text of the Pseudo-Oecumenian Catena. So this means that it's not a single corpus inserted into the text of the tradition, but they are like different, different sets, different corpora of extravagantes added in different times into the text of tradition of the text. Yes, this is what I'm looking for.
Yes, well, I think we're going to learn a lot more about this by the time you complete your research. So thank you for this insight into it. I'm going to stop the form.